Newmarket Aurora, for electing me and having me serve them, and I look forward to doing so for many, many, many years to come. But today I want to congratulate the Newmarket Hurricanes and the Aurora Tigers, two provincial junior A hockey teams within my riding, for the successful Pink in the Rink fundraising game they held last week. The fundraising game has become known as the Battle of Yonge Street and is held in support of the Stronach Regional Cancer Centre at the South Lake Regional Health Centre, the magnificent hospital within my riding. I was proud to play a small part in the event by taking part in the pre-game puck drop ceremony. Thousands of dollars were raised, and all participants should be proud. This game also serves as a memorial to three young men associated with the teams who all left us much too early. Kevin Lord, KJ Romella, and Josh Sador, who is the son of Steve Sador, a former Newmarket Hurricanes assistant coach. Thank you to the Hurricanes and to the Tigers for doing their part to contribute to my wonderful community, and they serve as a prime example of the fantastic organizations within Newmarket Aurora. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we count down to Canada's 150th birthday, I want to share an exciting proposal from Canada's internationally acclaimed air show performers. I want to encourage members in the House to get involved. My local Rocky Mountain House Air Show Society is proposing a 2017 Canadian Arctic Aviation Tour. This air show will completely crisscross Canada's north, encompassing 41 air shows and 47 community flybys, covering a total of 16,000 nautical miles, equivalent to 3/4 of the way around the world. This will not only set a world record, but put Canada's north on the map. Mr. Speaker, this will be an opportunity for our northern communities to have, for the first time, an air show in their communities. A performance they will never forget. Importantly, our sovereignty and our great and vast northern regions will be shared by Canadians as we celebrate Canada's 150th birthday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brampton South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As this is my first chance to rise in this House, I would like to thank my constituents of Brampton South for electing me to be their voice. I would also like to thank my husband Gurjeet, my twin daughter Archie and Amrit, my son Akash, my brother Sukhdeep, my parents, all the volunteers, the voters and supporters of Brampton South who believed in me. I would like to take this opportunity to commend a fantastic group of dedicated volunteers, Amigos Portuguese, for their work in raising over $1.3 million to support the New Peel Memorial Hospital's life-saving work. The goal was $1 million, but when they hit it, they kept going. I was happy to be at the event where they presented the contribution. I salute these local leaders for their hard work, bringing our community together as a good cause. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi Bay James Nunavut.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the wake of the events that happened in Val d'Or in October 2015, I'd like to say that the Val d'Or statement was signed on December 15th. There were many encounters between the Mayor of Val d'Or and many Aboriginal leaders of the community. This statement talks about the awareness of discrimination and racism that are shown towards Aboriginals, and it condemns violence in all its forms, and it sincerely expresses to instate a proper agreement between Aboriginals and all other people in this community. And Mr. Corbet said that they need to stamp out racism, and that is a gesture that deserves to be saluted and commended. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Glengarry Prescott Russell.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to rise in the House today to recognize the hard work of exceptional individuals in Glengarry Prescott Russell. Each year, for the past 20 years, the Banquet of the Francophonie recognizes the contribution of individuals to the visibility of the Francophonie. This year, Maurice Godard, Gilles Fournier, Bruno Lecotte, and Jocelyn Leroux will be receiving the Order of the Francophonie. while Jean-Sébastien Bois and Julien Lalonde will receive the Thomas Godefroy Youth Award. The community involvement and the dedication of these individuals make Eastern Ontario a great place to live in French. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate them and tell them how eager I am to share this special moment with them on April 2nd. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the Francophone community outside Quebec has a great deal of hope in this government, and I know that the Minister of Canadian Heritage and the Parliamentary Secretary will do excellent work to ensure that the French language thrives outside of Quebec.
Abbotsford.
Today I honor the passing of a remarkable man, friend, and longtime Abbotsford resident, Ron Sweeney. Ron passed away peacefully this past November. As a much-loved and visionary educator, Mr. Sweeney inspired generations of students to achieve their full potential. As an athlete and coach, he is fondly remembered by many for the Sweeney Hockey League and the many teams he supported. He served on City Council and countless community organizations and was the inspiration behind the popular Sweeney Family Singers. Above all, Ron was a man of deep faith and received from Pope Benedict XVI the Benemerenti Medal for his service to the Catholic Church. He was also the worthy recipient of the Order of Abbotsford. He leaves behind his wife Mary, their 7 children and spouses, 29 grandchildren, and 20 great-grandchildren. On behalf of the residents of Abbotsford, I honor his enduring love for others, which has inspired thousands of our citizens to live full and meaningful lives. Thank you, Ron.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 25th anniversary of the City of Vaughan, one of Canada's most vibrant and rapidly growing communities. The last quarter century has seen an unprecedented transformation from a small municipality to a dynamic city boasting more than 10,000 businesses and a population of over 320,000. Vaughan's growth shows little signs of slowing with initiatives like the Toronto-York Spadina subway extension, the Mackenzie Vaughan Hospital, and the Vaughan Metropolitan Centre well underway. Vaughan is on its way to becoming a world-class city fueled by its extraordinary people. As a Member of Parliament, I'm privileged to represent such a diverse, multicultural community where 99 languages are spoken and almost half the population are immigrants. I ask the members to join with me in wishing the City of Vaughan a happy silver anniversary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, recently I was honoured to welcome our Prime Minister and members of this Cabinet to my riding, the beautiful New Brunswick Southwest, and to my hometown of St. Andrews by the Sea. Hosting the first meeting of 2016 in New Brunswick is significant, as it shows Canadians that rural communities are a priority for our government. The Prime Minister and Cabinet were able to see firsthand the optimism in the region and the opportunities for growth in tourism development, scientific research, and innovation in agriculture, aquaculture, and fishing. I wish to thank New Brunswickers for the way you warmly and openly welcomed our Prime Minister and Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that how the Prime Minister and Cabinet took the time to personally connect with Canadians will lead to the real change Canadians expect. Thank you.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
On Sunday, citizens of British Columbia will gather to pay respect to a great man who recently left us. A man who also left a legacy in British Columbia that will never be forgotten. Let us take a moment to recognize former Kelowna business leader and BC Premier Bill Bennett. Who could imagine British Columbia today without SkyTrain in the Lower Mainland, Expo 86, and of course the Coquihalla Highway that helped become the economic engine for the interior of British Columbia? If you look closely at the legacy of Bill Bennett and his many accomplishments in office, there is a pattern. Infrastructure and projects that supported our local economies as much as they also enhanced our quality of life. This is indeed a legacy that will benefit many generations of British Columbians to come. Let us remember Bill Bennett for his service, for his leadership, and for his vision. Please join me in sending our condolences to the Bennett family. God bless.
Mr. Speaker, on January 19th, Further to the Liberal government's promise of openness and transparency, I joined my colleagues of Outaouais, Hull-Aylmer, Pontiac, and Argenteuil-la-Petite-Nation to hold pre-budget consultations with some 25 representatives of social and economic groups of the region. All those who were invited came. According to what those who attended said, this was a first in the region. A summary of the session has already been forwarded to the Minister of Finance. A number of issues were touched upon, including how to help families make ends meet, support for persons in need, and investments that are required in infrastructure in order to create jobs. This is a great need in our region. We need to renew our city and facilitate the development of our region. The discussions were very productive, and I'd like to thank all those who took the time to come to these consultations. Together, we will find ways to strengthen the economy and reinstate fairness in the region of the Outaouais. Thank you.
Member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the important work being done in my riding by Safe Rail Communities and its founders, Patricia Lai and Helen Vasilakos. Parkdale High Park est bordé par pas moins de 3 voies ferrées.
There are 3 railways around Parkdale High Park. This is not only a problem for our people, but for everyone in Canada, as we saw from the tragedy in Lac Mégantic. And these railways go through Parkdale High Park and other places in Canada.
Of gathering information and urging government action on the issue of rail safety. They host community meetings. They make deputations before standing committees. The first petition that I will have the honour of tabling in this chamber will be from Safe Rail, calling for stronger regulation and more transparent information sharing. It is Canadians like Helen and Patricia who make our communities and our country stronger and safer. I salute their efforts, and I urge all in this House to do so as well. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Ballycurds, Lloydminster.
Mr. Speaker, 1 in 5 jobs in Canada and 60% of our nation's GDP are directly linked to exports. The reality of today's global marketplace is that businesses must have the ability to plan ahead. Businesses require reliability, predictability, and stability so that they can maintain sustainability and profitability in global supply chains. Without these key components, companies will seek out other jurisdictions who have indicated their intent to implement trade agreements like the TPP. The implementation of free trade pacts such as the TPP will mean more competition for Canadian enterprises. That rules-based competition is fundamental to spurring efficiency and innovation. The more competitive our trading partners, the more our Canadian enterprises will seek to invest and innovate. Canadians ask the Liberals to stop pontificating and start participating. Give Canadians a timeline for TPP ratification, Mr. Speaker. We can't afford to be left out.
The Honourable Member for Whitby.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about a remarkable young woman from my riding of Whitby. On January 2nd of this year, Janine Lillian Mutton represented Canada in the 2016 European International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Championship in Portugal, capturing the silver medal in the medium heavyweight class. Janine is the #1 ranked medium heavyweight white belt in North America and #3 ranked in the world. She has also captured the gold medal in 6 international competitions in the past year alone. I am pleased to rise today to draw attention to this exceptional young woman, and thank you for representing Whitby and Canada so well on the world stage. Congratulations, Janine.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I am honoured to rise in this House to recognize a local teacher, Belinda Daniels, a passionate spokesperson for her people, language, and culture. Belinda Daniels is a Nehiyaw. This important fact must be respected as we speak about her. Recently, Ms. Daniels was nominated one of the 50 finalists worldwide and the only Canadian finalist for the Varkey Foundation Global Teacher Prize, long considered the Nobel Prize for Teaching. A teacher at Mount Royal Collegiate in Saskatoon West, Ms. Daniels has been a positive force in transforming the lives of her many students, teaching colleagues, and many others by developing and delivering Indigenous language immersion camps over the past 10 years. All levels of government should take immediate action on the TRC recommendations, and La Loche is a poignant reminder of how urgently we need to act on these recommendations. Ms. Daniels has shown us a way forward that is respectful, effective, relevant, and transformative. Please join me in recognizing Ms. Daniels' achievement as a HoC Foundation finalist and for her work on the front lines of healing and hope for Indigenous peoples in my community. Thank you.
Honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, while the government dithers, the crisis worsens. People and businesses in Lakeland and Alberta are struggling. It's rippling through all sectors and across Canada. From single-handedly creating more than half the nation's jobs in 2011 as Canada's longtime economic engine, Alberta lost 100,000 jobs in the past year and is expected to lose 27,000 more in 2016. Low oil prices and landlocked resources are not the only cause. Bad policy, mixed messages, federal capitulation to self-interested maligning here and abroad make things worse. Members opposite say they understand the human consequence of job loss. Those words are empty and don't put food on the table or pay the mortgage. Yesterday, they rejected a national tie that could bind us all, economically, physically, and symbolically. It's time for the government to show they truly care about the magnitude and long-term impacts of the challenges hitting Alberta the hardest. They need to act in the best interest of my home province, which is in the best interest of Canada.
That's right. The honourable member for Mission, Matt Sweeney, Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to honour a constituent of mine, decorated veteran Mr. John Wesley Kirkpatrick, who received the French Legion of Honour this past December for his service in the World War II. A resident of Ashcroft, BC, Mr. Kirkpatrick joined the Army in 1939 and was assigned to Royal Canadian Army Service Corps. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Mr. Kirkpatrick landed in Normandy at Juno Beach. He went to serve Belgium, Holland, and Germany. It was through the bravery, courage, and sacrifice of Canadian soldiers, such as Mr. Kirkpatrick, that the Allies were able to liberate France. We remember and honor Mr. Kirkpatrick's valor and that of the men and women of Canadian Armed Forces who serve our country so that we're able to live in a democratic and free nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. Question orale. The honourable member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, families across Canada have been hit hard by Liberal inaction, and they want to get back to work. We know that the Prime Minister doesn't want our oil and gas developed. His own senior advisor, Gerald Butts, has repeatedly called for a moratorium on Western energy projects. A defeated Liberal candidate in the last election said pipelines make Canada, quote, America's dirty gas tank. That candidate is now the Chief of Staff to the Minister of the Environment. Instead of being embarrassed about Canada's natural resources, which employ so many people across the country, why don't they stand up and protect our jobs?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that people in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland are challenged with changes in commodity and oil prices. We are working together with them. We know that the right thing to do is to help Canadians. I spoke yesterday with the Alberta Minister of Finance to see how we could work together, and I'm pleased to say that he understands that there is a stabilization fund that Alberta can apply for, and the potential is for up to $250 million. Should they apply, we would work expeditiously to move forward on that request.
Honourable member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, contrary to what the Prime Minister has said, the Conservative review process worked. It led to the approval of 4 major pipelines. And the proof is in the hundreds of thousands of jobs those projects created all across the country. This week, the Prime Minister has moved the goalposts. He has added months of waiting time and extra red tape. Why? Well, we know his own senior policy advisor has publicly called for 2/3 of Canada's oil and gas, quote, to remain underground. Will the Prime Minister admit that his new job-killing process is designed to block new projects?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, First, we want to set the record straight. There have not been pipelines to Tidewater over the last 9 years. That's right. We know that we need to have a new process, a process that engages Canadians, because we understand that Canadians need to have confidence in any measures that we take. We are working together with all constituents to ensure that we can actually improve our situation in this new government.
Right on. Honourable member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we debated a very sensible Conservative motion that called on this House to support the energy industry in our country and the men and women who want to work. The people of New Brunswick, Alberta, and Saskatchewan are overwhelmingly supportive of the Energy East pipeline. Will the Liberal MPs from those hard-hit provinces be free to stand up for their constituents? Will they be free to vote in favor of our motion? Will they be free to show how important, understand how important this issue is? Will the member for Wascana be free to vote in favor of our motion?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know the resource sector is very important to Canadians and our economy. At this time of low global commodity prices, Canadian families and communities are hurting. The solution is growing our economy and creating good-paying jobs. Our interim approach will help do just that. We know the only way resources will get to new markets is if Canadians have confidence in the review process. The stakeholders I have spoken to this week welcome the clarity and are committed to being partners in growing our economy.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the role of the Prime Minister isn't just to be a referee. Workers in the energy and natural resources sectors need a government that works with them. Projects like Energy East can't be used as a political plaything for a government that doesn't understand the economy. Can this government commit to working with the people who are worried and not hurt them? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
No, we have released 5 principles to provide clarity and assistance for the interim approach to projects in process. This will allow for further consultation with Indigenous peoples, communities, our provincial and municipal partners, and further, the Minister will be appointing a ministerial representative to facilitate this process and report back to him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, despite what the current Prime Minister thinks, people can't live on love, fresh water, and selfies. The duty of any government is to ensure that Canadians have bread and butter on the table every day. Unfortunately, this Liberal government is totally incompetent when it comes to the economy, and its only talent is to rapidly grow the deficit. Mr. Speaker, when will the government finally show economic leadership and help projects like Energy East? The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to say that we are showing economic leadership in this country. We have started off with an important first step. We've reduced taxes on 9 million Canadians. Our next steps will also be important. We're going to help the most vulnerable with the Canada Child Benefit, and we're going to make investments in infrastructure that will make a short, medium, and long-term improvement in our economy.
Mr. Speaker, the government says that it wants to base its decisions on facts, but there is no economic impact study for the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. But the government intends to sign the agreement anyway. This is simply not responsible. Independent studies have shown that thousands of jobs will be lost, and that does nothing to reduce inequality. Can the minister tell us on what basis he will sign this agreement that will cost Canadians thousands of good jobs? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. First of all, I would like to thank the member for the question. During the election campaign, we promised to hold consultations on the TPP, which was negotiated in secret by the former government. The NDP rejected it without even reading it. And we are consulting, as we said we would do before the election.
Well, let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals have never said no to any bad Conservative trade deal, not a single time. Now, as North American foreign ministers meet, the former Mexican ambassador has spoken out against U.S. tactics on the TPP. In the final deal, the U.S. got far better terms than Canada for auto, putting good Canadian jobs at risk. Now, independent studies say the Conservatives' lopsided deal could cost 60,000 jobs and will increase inequality. How can the Liberals possibly justify signing this bad deal?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we will sign this deal in order to proceed with consultations as we have promised the Canadian people. This deal will be studied in this Parliament in front of parliamentary committees, and we will continue to consult Canadians from coast to coast to coast. The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Foreign Affairs indicated that keeping the Office of Religious Freedom was not a priority for his government. At the same time, the minister said that he would defend all human rights, including freedom of religion. We agree, but as usual, the devil is in the details. Can the minister give us details on his game plan and his timeline? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
For the question. First of all, it's important to understand that the decision has not yet been made, but the promotion and protection of human rights, including freedom of religion, of belief, of conscience, is an integral part of Canada's constructive leadership in the world. We are currently looking at our options on how best to build on the good work that has been accomplished in this area and enhance our efforts to champion peaceful pluralism, respect for diversity, and human rights as a whole. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, the Arms Trade Treaty was adopted by the United Nations in 2013. That treaty, as we know, aims to regulate arms trade beyond national borders and ensure that they are not used in ways that violate international rights and human rights. But Canada has still not signed the agreement. In fact, Canada is the only NATO country not to have done so. When will the government keep its promise and sign this treaty? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much. Of course, we were not an original signatory to the treaty, but we are more than pleased to be acceding to the treaty in due course.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is a leader among energy-rich nations, the fifth largest oil producer in the world, producing 3.6 million barrels of oil per day. Yet Eastern Canadian refineries import an astounding 86% of their oil due to lack of infrastructure. Energy East is an immediate, shovel-ready solution to this problem. Mr. Speaker, why does the Minister of Natural Resources actually believe that importing foreign oil is better than using Canadian oil and creating Canadian jobs?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, if we are going to attract investments, we need to sustainably develop our energy resources. Then we have to better engage Canadians, conduct deeper consultations with Indigenous peoples, and base decisions, Mr. Speaker, on science, facts, and evidence. Without the confidence of Canadians, none of these projects will move forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, we keep hearing Liberal platitudes and empty promises about job losses in Canada. Let's not forget 100,000 people lost their jobs. Albertans haven't experienced this kind of unemployment since the 1980s when Prime Minister Trudeau introduced the NEP. Mr. Speaker, when will the Minister of Natural Resources and his colleagues actually come up with a plan to support our energy sector and the workers who lost their jobs?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we have committed to modernizing the NEB and having a more transparent process. We understand that Canadians across the country are hurting, and indeed certain areas more than others. But when any Canadian hurts, we all do. The only way we have a long-term solution to this is to grow the economy. And, Mr. Speaker, we will do exactly that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, the Prime Minister talked a lot about transparency. Yesterday, the Liberals announced that they were going to repeal 2 laws that are fundamental for unions, one on the accountability, another on voting. So how can the government say that it is transparent when it repeals laws concerning unions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason for the repealing of the bills is that they were originally not formulated in accordance with democratic principles of consultation and need. These were political instruments to attack the labour movement. We're going to reset, fair and balanced platform and move from there. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, while the minister was making this announcement, we learned that the unions were actually spending money to support the government, the now government, during the election campaign. So how much are the Liberals going to have to reimburse in total? The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that there was an incident in Ontario. As soon as it was recognized, we complied with the election laws and reimbursed the money in total.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, on a Friday afternoon right before Christmas, the government gutted the First Nations Transparency Act by removing all compliance measures. Without consequences, the law is useless, and band members are now denied access to basic information. How does the Minister explain to band members that the Liberal government's commitment to transparency is empty rhetoric?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her question. But everyone, including First Nations governments, want increased transparency and accountability, Mr. Speaker. And we are going to achieve this through full partnership in working with First Nation leaderships and organizations. We all know that a top-down approach from Ottawa has not worked with First Nations governments in this country. We intend to change it, and we will work with them in partnership to get the agreements that are open, transparent, and accountable for all Canadians and for their membership.
The member for Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this House, the Minister of Public Safety falsely claimed that his government follows the law. But the fact is, the Liberal government is clearly ignoring the law when it comes to compliance measures for the First Nations Financial Transparency Act. Why are the Liberals telling band members that they have to go to court to get basic information that is available for all other levels of government?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are establishing a strong partnership with First Nation governments in this country. We will, Mr. Speaker, in the meantime, First Nation governments will continue their long-standing reporting of their audited, consolidated financial statements, Mr. Speaker, including chiefs and councils, including salaries and expenses, and it will be disclosed to the department and to the membership of those First Nations.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Speaker, speaking of following the law, the Conservative government's war on the environment may be over, but the impacts linger. We've learned that it's not just the NEB who's been failing to enforce environmental laws. As revealed by the head of Environment Canada's enforcement branch, poor morale, fear of reprisals have made officers reluctant or unable to enforce environmental laws, forced to turn a blind eye to even serious environmental violations. Budget cuts, layoffs, and intimidation have left enforcement officers unable to do their important job to protect Canadians. What action is the minister taking to restore the powers of her enforcement officers?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member for her question. I think that the Honourable Member would have heard during the election campaign that there was a significant focus on re-establishing the capabilities of the Department of the Environment and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans with respect to science and with respect to enforcement, and we are working on plans in that regard. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In the last election, Canadians called for a better NEB process, but without defined targets and more information, the new government's going to make a longer process without making a better process. Key stakeholders are noticing. It's why the Mayor of Burnaby said he was severely disappointed with the new Liberal measures, and First Nations are saying that the new measures ignore critical risks to rivers, ecosystems, and streams. The Minister said she'd base her decision on science, but the broken system isn't gathering it. Why is it that she's willing to move ahead with a decision without evidence?
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we have said all along that the NEB process, the NEB itself needs to be modernized, and we need to review the processes. We have put in interim principles to address those projects already in process, and we will work with our other ministries, such as the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and others, to make sure that we have robust protection for Canadians. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, just as question period was starting, we learned that Canada was left with a $392 million surplus in November. Don't take my word for it. The Finance Minister's own officials said it. In fact, from April to November, the federal surplus stands at $1 billion. Won't the Liberal Finance Minister just admit that Conservatives left Liberals a healthy surplus, and that in fact it's just bad economic management?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we had the challenging situation of coming into office after the previous government did not steward our economy effectively. We were left with an understanding that there was a surplus, but we found out that there was a deficit. They miscalculated where we were at. In my economic and fiscal update, we gave Canadians a clear and transparent understanding. We don't focus on 1 month, we look at the whole year, and it's quite clear that we're working from a position of a deficit left by the government on the opposite side.
Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London. Order. The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Liberals are threatening to run $10, $20, $30 billion deficits this year. The fact remains that Conservatives left Liberals a healthy surplus. It's only through runaway Liberal spending and planned job-killing increases that are putting Canada back into deficits. Will the Finance Minister take ownership and admit that Liberals have no economic plan for Canada?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the previous government racked up $150 billion in debt for this country. We now face a deficit left by the previous government. Our plan is to actually take a new path, a path of growth. We're bringing money into the economy through tax cuts. We're bringing money into the economy through Canada Child Benefit, but we're going to stimulate the economy over time through our infrastructure spending in Canada.
Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River, and Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a father of four, I understand how important it is for families to be able to budget their own finances, but it's awfully difficult when you don't know what's coming in. We all know that the Liberal government has decided to do away with the UCCB that helps all families in Canada. Mr. Speaker, many Canadian families will no longer get this benefit. When will the minister come clean with Canadian families and tell them when their last check will arrive?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to the member on the opposite side for giving me an opportunity to explain that we're going to introduce the Canada Child Benefit. It's actually going to focus on those Canadians with children who need help. 9 out of 10 families with children will be helped through our new benefit, and we will raise hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty.
Honourable Member for Prince George, Peace River, and Northern Rockies. Order.
Speaking of those same families, earlier this week the Liberals announced those new roadblocks for resource projects. British Columbians are waiting for these important LNG projects to start. Now it will even take longer for these important Canadian jobs to be created in my riding and across the country. When will the Minister of the Environment admit that Liberals' disdain for natural resource development is hurting British Columbians, British Columbian families, and British Columbian jobs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. Earlier this week, the Minister of Natural Resources and the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change outlined the interim principles by which all projects will need to abide. And they essentially are about re-establishing the confidence that Canadians have in the process such that we can actually get to the point where our products can be exported. Those principles involve greenhouse gas emissions being associated with the product being fully transparent. It involves proper consultation with Aboriginal communities and appropriate community consultation. These are the ways that we restore public confidence in the process such that these projects can move ahead.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals promised to reopen marine communication centres in BC, closed by the Conservatives. But the Comox Coast Guard Traffic Centre is set to close March 31st, and the Liberals are still missing in action. The closure will put lives at risk in coastal communities. The government has a responsibility to keep Canadians safe. Will they commit today to keep the Comox MCTS Centre open?
The Honourable Minister for Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, marine safety is a top priority of the Canadian Coast Guard. Through modern technology, we've been able to ensure that no communications gaps will be in place and we'll still maintain that safety. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative decision to close the Tofino MCTS Centre in Ucluelet left coastal communities without protection. My community is still reeling from the sinking of the Leviathan II and the recent loss of lives. This tragedy underlined that having local eyes and ears is essential for coastal safety. Liberals promised to restore the Coast Guard's ability to respond to emergencies. So will they back this up by immediately reopening the Tofino Marine Communication Centre?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I'd like to reiterate that the Canadian Coast Guard's top priority is the safety of mariners and to make sure that the communications between the vessels and the monitors, that safety is there. The technology that we've included into our new system guarantees that safety, and it will always be there. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Glengarry Prescott Russell. Mr. Speaker, while the economy remains fragile, middle-class families are having trouble making ends meet. People in my riding want a program that will help those that need it most, instead of a program that helps the wealthiest families. Can the Minister of Finance indicate how he plans to offer more help to families? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we begin with our first step, that is a middle-class tax cut. That will help 9 million Canadians with a cut in their income tax and more money in their pockets. But the second stage will be the child tax benefit, which will improve the situation of 9 out of 10 families and help hundreds of thousands of children rise out of poverty and have a better life. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the previous Conservative government was a world leader in providing economic, diplomatic, and military support to our Ukrainian allies. Ukraine's new ambassador to Canada has requested further defensive military equipment to assist in the conflict with Russian forces. President Putin illegally annexed Crimea and continues to place troops in eastern Ukraine. Will the Liberal Minister of National Defence support our allies and provide Ukrainians with the additional military equipment?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. Canada does remain committed to Ukrainian partners. We have currently 200 of our brave men and women working alongside the Ukrainian forces in a training role. I'll be attending a very important meeting in Europe with our coalition partners in NATO to discussing the future of what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be continuing to support the Ukraine. Thank you.
Honourable member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Minister of Foreign Affairs stated that Canada and Russia has common interests. Our government was concerned with the freedom and territorial sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. The Liberals are interested in supporting a regime that is currently illegally occupying our Ukrainian ally. Will this Liberal minister continue to enforce and explore additional sanctions on those responsible for the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of Donbass?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We stand steadfast with Ukraine and will continue to do what we can to support them. The Russian interference and invasion of the Ukrainian territory is completely unacceptable. In case there's any doubt in anyone's mind, the Minister is travelling to Ukraine next week. We are always interested in constructive engagements with other countries, and with regard to Russia, until it demonstrates full respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its neighbours, then we are extremely cautious and completely aligned with the Ukraine.
Honourable member for Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago, the Minister of Finance started fiddling with the mortgage rules because he was concerned that too many Canadians will be tempted to borrow money now while interest rates are low. Can the Minister explain why he thinks low interest rates make it a dangerous time for Canadians to buy homes for their families, but a great time for Liberals to borrow all they want to fund their out-of-control spending?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that we took action in December to deal with what we saw as pockets of risk in the Canadian housing market. We understand that Canadians' housing investment is likely the most significant investment that most people will ever make. Up to us to make sure that we protect that by taking prudential measures to look at our housing market. We believe that we've ensured the safety and security of Canadians' investments in their homes.
Hear, hear. The member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen, Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, interprovincial trade accounts for 20% of Canada's GDP. The previous Conservative Industry Minister had made interprovincial trade a key file and was able to broker an agreement with all provinces and territories on the need to break down interprovincial trade barriers. Now, unfortunately, the Liberal government makes no mention whatsoever of interprovincial trade in its vaunted mandate letters. Will this government actually make interprovincial trade a real priority, or will they just admit they have no plan to break down these interprovincial trade barriers at a time when the economy needs a boost?
Good. Well, Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Innovation and Science.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the honourable member for his question. Let me make it clear to the honourable member that interprovincial trade is an important priority for this government.
The honourable member for Saskatoon West. Order.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Labour tabled a bill to repeal two anti-union Conservative bills that were adopted to attack workers' rights. Having long fought against the Conservative bills, we welcome this first step. However, major actions were missing in the bill. The Liberals committed to restore good faith bargaining with our public sector service workers. When will the minister restore the sick days benefits and the health and safety provisions for our public sector workers?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question. Our government is re-establishing a culture of respect for Canada's public service. We are working closely with our public service, and unlike the previous government, we will not prejudice the bargaining process. We're going to respect the bargaining process, and we're going to negotiate in good faith. At the same time, our government is investing in jobs and growth with a progressive mandate to grow the Canadian economy. So we will negotiate, respecting the fact that we are in a tough fiscal situation, and we will do the right thing.
Honourable member.
Honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, we've had a change of government, but nothing has changed for the French language in government. The Translation Bureau continues to empty. Immigration Canada doesn't even take the trouble to translate an online form into French. Language testing for immigrants costs more in French than in English. After years of backsliding under the Conservatives, it's certainly not difficult to do better. Will the government finally rectify the situation, and what does it plan to do exactly?
The Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Monsieur le Président. Mr. Speaker, I thank the opposition member for his question. Our government takes official languages very seriously. It's quite clear that we will develop a new action plan starting in 2018, and as early as this summer, we will start consultations for that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Minister characterized my lack of faith in the government's Senate appointments process as being cynical. Let me suggest today that the antidote to cynicism is transparency. There would certainly be less room for cynicism if the government would stop pretending that keeping Senate appointments under the absolute control of the Prime Minister is the only way to avoid reopening the Constitution. What the Supreme Court actually says in paragraph 50 of its Senate reference is that the Prime Minister's monopoly is only a non-justiciable constitutional convention. So why doesn't the government just admit the obvious? It doesn't want Senate reform. It wants to restore absolute control to the Prime Minister.
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Democratic
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for his question, and I do understand the nature of his cynicism. For 10 years, we saw broken promises and inaction, and incredible disappointment when it came from the Senate. In the last election, we promised a new, merit-based, transparent, and open process that will allow Canadians from coast to coast to coast to be able to apply and to serve this great country. I'm immensely confident in that process, and I would suggest to the member that he share that confidence and take a look at how the process will work, take a look at the eminent Canadians who are leading it, take a look at the incumbents that will come out of it.
Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston. Order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I certainly won't be looking at the list of nominees because that's a secret. Right? There would be a great deal less cynicism about the Senate appointment process if the list of nominees were not be treated like a state secret. The parliamentary secretary's excuse is that nominees who don't get chosen might face job repercussions. He actually said that. No doubt this explains why the Academy Awards wisely keep secret the list of actors to be nominated for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, and so on. So isn't it just obvious that the only person who's being sheltered from job repercussions is the Prime Minister, who is being sheltered from the public criticism that he'll face when he bypasses the best candidate selected by the nomination committees in favour of the one that suits him best?
Parliament Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I find the comparison between an executive search for the greatest Canadians, many of whom are in sensitive jobs and in precarious situations to explore new forms of employment, to Hollywood movies, which obviously love promotion and love the fact that they're put out there. Mr. Speaker, this process, which will be led by Canadians of enormous distinction, will ensure that the greatest Canadians from coast to coast to coast are able to apply, are able to be considered, and I have enormous confidence, as I'm sure once the member sees the outcome of the process and who is appointed, that this process will invigorate the Senate with a new merit-based process.
Honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, I will never, ever, ever know whether the best people were chosen because that will be a big, fat secret. Mr. Speaker, as for the question of electoral reform, last June the Prime Minister told Maclean's that, and I quote him, "It hasn't gone unnoticed by people that electoral reform has had a lot of trouble getting through plebiscites." Now, of course, the evidence from New Zealand would suggest otherwise. Still, this is the reason given by the Prime Minister for not holding a referendum. So who's truly cynical? Those who want the Canadian people to make the final choice, or a Prime Minister who won't give Canadians a vote because they may not approve of the electoral system that he personally has designed for them, and probably as well for his party's own advantage?
Secretary to the Minister of Democratic Institutions.
I welcome the member's enthusiasm, his newfound enthusiasm opposite for public engagement. The reality is, for over a decade, we heard about transformation of our electoral system or transformation of the Senate, and we saw only great disappointment and broken promises. In the short time that we've been in office, we've already described a robust plan to engage Canadians from coast to coast to make sure their voices are heard in keeping our commitment to end the first-past-the-post system and ensure that every Canadian, no matter who they are, gets the opportunity to express their democratic will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many registered charities have seen their important work impeded by the former government's decision to audit them for political activities. In many cases, these charitable organizations felt that the reason for which they were being audited was because they disagreed with the policies of the government at the time. Can the Minister of National Revenue update this House on the Canada Revenue Agency's political activities audit program? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government recognizes the essential role that charities and non-profit organizations make to public debate. The independence of the CRA in its oversight role is a fundamental principle that must be protected. That's why, as Minister of National Revenue, I will not play a role to select audits or interfere in the results of such audits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For decades, the Canadian Armed Forces have issued record of service ID cards to members when they left the military. Tens of thousands of veterans use this card with employers, legions, and veteran-friendly establishments around the world. This Liberal government is eliminating this ID card and replacing it with a gimmicky discount card. Why would this government take away IDs held by thousands of Canadian veterans and cheapen their service by replacing them with an inferior commercial card?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for her question. This is simply a transition with technology. We are upgrading the card that we will be offering to veterans once they leave the Canadian Forces. It will give them more options, it will provide more service, and it is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
The Honourable member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, transnational criminal organizations cause enormous harm around the world. Canada has a tradition of participating in international efforts to stem the tide against organized crime, whether at home or abroad. Can the Minister of National Defence inform the House of the government's latest initiative to help disrupt illicit trafficking operations at sea?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. I've seen the terrible damage inflicted onto Canadian cities and citizens caused by organized crime and their business in drug trafficking. This year's record success on Operation Carib is a testament to the Canadian Armed Forces, and particularly the Royal Canadian Navy, the Royal Canadian Air Force's dedication and perseverance to work with our allies in complex environments for the safety and security of the citizens of this continent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cariboo, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, while this Liberal government is busy brainstorming ways to add more and more red tape to discourage resource development and investment in this country, they have forgotten we currently stand without a Canada-U.S. softwood lumber agreement. An agreement that ended costly trade disputes between Canada and the U.S. and ensured 145,000 forestry jobs are protected in BC. Will anyone from this government please stand up and tell us why they aren't fighting for the hard-working Canadians employed in the forestry sector? Anyone.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. The softwood lumber dispute between Canada and the United States is a priority for our government. It is a question that has been raised at the very highest levels, Mr. Speaker. We are consulting stakeholders. We are consulting the provinces. The minister has met with Premier Christy Clark of British Columbia. The Prime Minister and the minister have had conversations with their counterparts in the United States, and we will do our best to ensure that there was softwood access to the American market. Thank you.
The honourable member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, as we found out this week, institutional bilingualism, as put forward by the federal government, means that 60% of non-francophone newcomers in Quebec think that it is not necessary to speak French to live and work in Montreal. Does the Minister of Canadian Heritage realize that in Quebec, the official bilingualism policy contributes to anglicizing newcomers and threatens the future of the French language in Quebec? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Our government is extremely proud of our international reputation when it comes to official bilingualism. It is a Liberal government that put that policy in place, and it's a Liberal government that will clean up 10 years of ignorance by the Conservative government of the past to improve the situation of Anglophones in Quebec and Francophones elsewhere. We take that responsibility seriously. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, a new study has just confirmed what we've known for a long time. That is that individual bilingualism is found mainly in Quebec. Does the Minister of Canadian Heritage find it acceptable that the City of Ottawa, the capital of Canada, that brags about being a lovely bilingual country, coast to coast to coast, has been refusing to have a bilingual status for years now? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, with regard to official bilingualism in this country, we are in charge. We respect the jurisdiction of every level of government in this country. When it comes to the bilingual status of a city, that's up to their mayor and city councillors to decide. We will work from coast to coast to encourage any city to become bilingual if it wishes to do so. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday, it was Françoise Bertrand, the president of the Federation of Quebec Chambers of Commerce, who decided to write about the federal government's stubbornness in wanting to create a Pan-Canadian Securities Commission. She talks about a bad idea that was artificially invented by Ottawa and that would have grave consequences for Quebec's economy. My question is whether the minister can tell us why the government is so hell-bent on ridding Montreal of its financial sector and its decision-making powers. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will respect the 2011 Supreme Court ruling on this issue. We will respect the rights of all provinces to decide whether or not they'd like to be part of a national securities regulator. We will move forward with those provinces that are willing because we believe that it creates some efficiency in our country around this issue, and we respect that other provinces may decide to go alone.
Yeah. That will conclude question period for today. Tabling of documents, dépôt de documents. The Honourable Member for Carleton on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, there was a considerable debate today about the state of Canada's finances at the time of this government's taking office.